Tonight we're diving into medieval castle architects, the first network engineers. Forget everything Hollywood told you. This is the real story, and trust me, you probably wouldn't last a day. So before you get too comfortable, hit that like button if you enjoy this kind of deep dive, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now dim the lights, maybe grab a snack, and let's jump in. You wake up. It's 1190 AD, somewhere in northern France. The air tastes like wood smoke and horse manure, which is actually an improvement from yesterday when the tanners were working. You're not a knight, you're not a lord. You're something far more dangerous. You're an architect, and King Philip Augustus just hired you to design a fortress that needs to do something revolutionary. It needs to connect to other castles like nodes in a network, creating the world's first defensive mesh system. Think about it. Today, when we design computer networks, we obsess over redundancy, failover systems, and packet routing. Medieval castle architects were doing exactly the same thing, except their packets were messengers on horseback, their routers were watchtowers, and their firewalls were, well, actual walls that could be set on fire. You pull on your rough wool tunic, it itches like hell by the way, and head to your workshop. Your apprentices are already there, mixing mortar with their bare hands. The limestone dust makes everyone cough, but that's just Tuesday in the 12th century. On your drafting table lies a piece of vellum worth more than most peasants see in a lifetime. This is where you'll design something that won't just defend against armies, it'll communicate with a network of fortifications stretching across the entire kingdom. Here's what nobody tells you about medieval architects. They were basically the tech bros of their time, minus the hoodies and energy drinks. They traveled constantly, spoke multiple languages, understood mathematics that would make most people's heads explode, and most importantly, they thought in systems. While everyone else was thinking about individual castles, these guys were building networks. Your breakfast arrives. Bread so hard you could build a wall with it, ale that tastes like someone fermented it in their boots, and if you're lucky, some cheese that's only slightly green. You eat it anyway, because you need the energy. Today you're solving a problem that won't be formally recognized for another 800 years. How do you create a distributed communication system that can survive if individual nodes fail? The answer starts with sightlines. You spread out your maps, hand-drawn and wildly inaccurate by modern standards, but they're all you've got. Each castle needs to see at least two others, not just see them, communicate with them using fire signals, mirrors during the day, and runners when everything else fails. You're essentially designing TCP/IP protocol, except instead of electronic packets, you're using guys named Guillaume, who smell like they haven't bathed since last Easter. Your first challenge walks through the door. It's Baron Reynard, and he owns the land where you need to build a crucial relay castle. The man has the personality of a constipated boar, and the breath to match. He doesn't understand why his castle needs to be positioned to see Castle Montmorency to the east and Castle Droys to the west. He wants it in the valley where there's a nice spring. You try explaining network topology to a man who thinks bathing causes plague. You pull out your wax tablets and start drawing. See, in modern network engineering, we call this a single point of failure. You put the castle in the valley, and suddenly your whole communication chain breaks. The enemy takes one castle, and half your kingdom goes dark. But put it on that uncomfortable windy hill where his peasants will hate hauling stones. Now you've got redundancy. The Baron grunts, unconvinced. Time for the medieval architect's secret weapon, flattery mixed with fear. You lean in close, ignoring the smell of rotting teeth and last night's wine. You tell him how his castle will be the linchpin, the critical node that the king himself will depend on. Miss a signal, fail to relay a message, and the blood of fallen knights is on his hands. Plus you add with a smile, hilltop castles are much harder to siege. His enemies will exhaust themselves climbing, while his archers pick them off like ripe apples. This is what they don't teach in architecture school. Half your job is engineering, the other half is psychology. You're not just building structures, you're managing egos, navigating politics, and occasionally avoiding assassination attempts from rival architects who want your contracts. By noon you've convinced the Baron, but now comes the real challenge. You need to design a castle that can fulfill 3 functions simultaneously. First, it needs to defend itself. Thick walls, murder holes, the works. Second, it needs to relay messages quickly and accurately. That means tower placement for maximum visibility. Third, and this is where it gets interesting, it needs to process information. Think about that for a second. A modern network router receives data, makes decisions about where to send it, and forwards it along. Your castle needs to do the same thing. A fire signal from the east might mean Vikings. A signal from the south might mean rebellion. But what if both fires are lit? The castle needs protocols, predetermined responses, ways to escalate or filter information. You sketch out the tower positions. The main keep goes in the center, naturally, but the real genius is in the auxiliary towers. Each one is positioned not just for defense, but for communication. The eastern tower has a direct line of sight to 3 other castles. The western tower can signal to 2 more. If the eastern tower falls, the western can take over its rolling duties. You've just invented redundant network paths, 7 centuries before anyone coins the term. Your apprentice young Thomas watches over your shoulder. The boy's got potential, even if he does have an unfortunate habit of eating the chalk. He asks why you're building so many stairs. Ah, stairs. The unsung heroes of castle networking. You see, stairs aren't just about getting from point A to point B. They're about message speed. A properly designed spiral staircase, turning clockwise as you ascend, gives defenders an advantage. Their sword arms are free, while attackers are cramped against the central pillar. But more importantly for our network, stairs determine how fast information flows through your castle. You've designed a special messenger staircase, separate from the main traffic. It runs straight from the watchtower to the Lord's chamber, then continues down to the stables. A messenger can sprint from sighting to saddle in under 2 minutes. In network terms, you've just reduced your latency. Modern engineers obsess over milliseconds. You're obsessing over minutes, but the principle is identical. Thomas brings you lunch. More bread, this time with some questionable meat that might have been pig or dog, or something that died naturally, and they're hoping the salt hides the taste. You eat it while explaining to him how the castle's communication system will work. Each tower has a predetermined set of signals. 1 fire means enemy sighted, 2 fires mean enemy approaching, 3 fires mean under attack. But here's where it gets clever. The duration matters too. A brief fire followed by smoke means cavalry, sustained fire means infantry, alternating fire and darkness means urgent. Skip normal protocols. It's basically binary code, except instead of 1s and 0s, you're using fire and darkness, and just like modern networks have error correction, you build in redundancy. Every signal must be acknowledged. The receiving castle lights a confirmation fire. No confirmation, send a rider. Still no response. That castle might be compromised. Route around it. The Baron returns with his steward, a thin man who looks like he subsists entirely on worry and watered wine. They want to know about cost. Ah yes, the eternal question. Building a networked castle system isn't cheap. Each castle needs specialized equipment, signal mirrors made of polished metal, expensive trained watchers who can read and write, extremely expensive, messenger pigeons, for when visual communication fails, expensive, and they taste terrible when you're under siege and run out of food. But here's the thing you explain to them, trying not to sound like you're talking to particularly slow children. The cost of the network is nothing compared to the cost of invasion. One successful enemy raid costs more than 10 castles. The network pays for itself the first time it prevents a surprise attack. You pull out your biggest selling point, the multiplication effect. One castle spots an enemy force. Within an hour, every castle in the network knows. Within 2 hours, reinforcements are moving. Within 3 hours, what would have been an easy raid becomes a trap. The enemy arrives to find not one isolated castle, but a coordinated response from 5. It's the medieval equivalent of a DDoS attack, except you're the one doing the attacking. The steward's eyes light up. He's beginning to understand. The Baron, slower on the uptake, is still focused on the spring in the valley. You resist the urge to grab him by his greasy beard and shake some sense into him. Instead, you promise to design an elaborate aqueduct system to bring water up the hill. It'll cost a fortune and require constant maintenance, but at least his castle won't compromise the entire network because he wanted easy access to fresh water. The next morning arrives with all the gentleness of a mace to the skull. Church bells at 4 a.m. because apparently God needs to know you're awake before the sun is. You stumble out of your straw mattress, which has definitely seen better days and possibly several deaths, to find your workshop in chaos. A royal messenger stands there, mud-splattered and exhausted. The king wants to see your plans. Today, in person, at court, which is a 3-day ride away, you have 1 hour to pack everything. Now, traveling as a medieval architect isn't like throwing a laptop in a bag. Your plans are drawn on vellum that costs more than a peasant's yearly income. Your instruments, compass, straight edge, plumb bob, are precision tools in an age where precision means probably won't fall down immediately. You carefully roll each document, wrap them in oiled leather to protect against rain, then pack them in a specially designed wooden case that you'll guard with your life. Your apprentices scramble to prepare the traveling workshop. See, when you're designing a castle network, you can't just show up with blueprints. You need models. Small wooden castles that demonstrate sight lines, wax tablets for quick calculations, samples of stone from different quarries, because Lord knows every noble thinks they're a geology expert. And most importantly, your secret weapon, a detailed map of existing castles with their communication ranges marked in red ink. The journey to court is basically a medieval road trip from hell. Your horse, a temperamental mare named Tempest, because apparently medieval people had no imagination for names, decides every shadow might be a demon. The roads are less roads and more suggestions of where you might travel if you enjoy broken axles, and it's raining. Because of course it's raining, but here's where things get interesting. As you travel, you're not just moving through space, you're moving through the very network you're designing. Every few hours you pass a watchtower. Each one signals your passage to the next. By the time you're halfway to court, the king already knows you're coming, what route you're taking, and approximately when you'll arrive. The network is working, even in its primitive state. You stop at Castle Senlis for the night. The Castellan Sir Guillaume is one of the few nobles who actually understands what you're trying to build. Over dinner, roasted swan, which tastes exactly as pretentious as it sounds, he shows you something fascinating. His garrison has been experimenting with your signal system. They've added their own innovations, different colored smoke using various plants, reflective surfaces made from hammered brass that can signal during full daylight, even a crude telescope made from curved glass that extends viewing range. This is the beautiful thing about networks. They evolve, you design the protocol, but the users adapt it, improve it, make it their own. It's exactly like how internet protocols develop today. Someone creates HTTP, and before you know it, people are streaming cat videos and overthrowing governments. Sir Guillaume has a problem though, and it's a big one. His castle can see Castle Crepy to the north, and Castle Mo to the south. But there's a gap to the west, a dead zone where no signals can penetrate. The forest is too thick, the hills too high. In network terms, he's got a routing problem that needs a creative solution. You stand on his battlements at dawn, studying the landscape while your breakfast porridge that could double as castle mortar congeals in its bowl. The morning mist clings to the valleys like a shy ghost. And then you see it. There's a church spire, barely visible, right in the middle of the dead zone. It's not a castle, but does it need to be? This is your stroke of genius. Why limit the network to castles? Churches have towers, monasteries have walls, even wealthy merchants have fortified manor houses. If you can convince them to join the network, suddenly your mesh becomes so dense that no enemy force could move without detection. You pull out your wax tablets and start calculating. A church tower with a signal fire could cover the gap. Better yet, monks are literate. They can handle complex messages, not just simple fire signals. They already have a communication network through their religious orders. You're not building a new network, you're integrating existing ones. It's like connecting different ISPs to create the internet backbone. Sir Guillaume is skeptical. The church and the nobility don't always play nice. Getting a bishop to cooperate with military signals might be like getting a cat to cooperate with anything, but you have an ace up your sleeve. Frame it as a holy duty. These signals don't just protect castles, they protect Christian lands from pagan invaders. Suddenly every monk becomes a holy warrior, fighting with fire signals instead of swords. You draft a letter to the local bishop right there, using Sir Guillaume's seal to add weight. The language has to be perfect, respectful but urgent, pious but practical. You mention how the network could also carry church messages, announcements of feast days, calls for pilgrimage, deaths of important clergy. You're basically selling them medieval Twitter, and they don't even know it. By midday you're back on the road, but now you're thinking bigger, much bigger. What if the network isn't just defensive? What if it's economic? Merchants could pay to send commercial signals. Grain prices high in Paris. Wool shortage in Roman. Vikings spotted, maybe close your shops. The castle network becomes a data network, carrying not just military intelligence, but commerce, governance, social information. Your second night is spent at a monastery, and it's exactly as fun as it sounds. Complete silence during dinner, except for one monk reading from scripture in Latin. The food is somehow both bland and offensive to taste. Your bed is a wooden plank because comfort is apparently sinful. But the monks have something incredible. A library. By candlelight, you discover texts on Roman engineering. The Romans had their own signal networks, beacon towers stretching from Hadrian's Wall to Rome itself. They could transmit a message across the entire empire in days. You're not inventing something new, you're rediscovering something lost. The Dark Ages weren't dark because people were stupid. They were dark because networks had collapsed. The abbot, Father Benedict, finds you hunched over a particularly detailed description of Roman signal towers. He's ancient, looks like he might have personally known Charlemagne, but his eyes are sharp as fresh-forged steel. He sits down next to you, joints creaking like old castle gates, and starts talking about something unexpected, Viking raids from his youth. He describes how the Northmen would appear like phantoms, striking before any warning could spread. Entire towns burned while neighboring villages remained oblivious until they saw smoke on the horizon. But then he mentioned something that makes your architect brain light up like a signal fire. One monastery had survived by using bells, not just ringing them, but using patterns. Different rhythms meant different threats. Sound. You've been so focused on visual signals, you forgot about sound. Church bells can be heard for miles. In fog, when visual signals fail, sound still travels. In forests where sight lines are blocked, sound penetrates. You grab your tablets and start sketching. Every node in your network doesn't just need fire signals, it needs bells. Father Benedict watches you work, occasionally correcting your Latin when you label diagrams. Then he says something that changes everything. The church already has a sound network. Every monastery, every church, every chapel rings bells at specific times for prayers. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. 8 times a day, a coordinated sound signal crosses the entire kingdom. Your mind races. What if you could piggyback on this existing network, add emergency protocols to the prayer bells? A specific pattern after vespers means enemy sighted. A variation in the matins ring means urgent message. You're not asking the church to build new infrastructure, just to modify existing protocols. It's elegant. It's efficient. It's the medieval equivalent of using phone lines for dial-up internet. The next morning, you leave the monastery with more than ideas. Father Benedict gives you a letter of introduction to the Bishop of Paris. If you can convince him, you'll have access to every church in the kingdom. Your castle network just became exponentially more powerful. The final day of travel to court is through civilized lands, which means the roads are slightly less terrible, and the bandits are too well fed to bother robbing travelers. You use the time to refine your presentation. The king needs to see not just castles but a living, breathing network. You sketch diagrams showing information flow, response times, coverage areas. It looks remarkably like a modern network topology map, except drawn with ink made from oak galls and iron sulfate. As Paris comes into view, your stomach knots. The city is a maze of timber buildings leaning against each other like drunks after a feast. The streets are rivers of mud, human waste, and things you don't want to identify. But rising above it all is the royal palace. And somewhere inside, King Philip Augustus waits to hear how you're going to revolutionize warfare with what amounts to medieval fiber optics. You clean yourself as best you can at an inn that charges outrageous prices for water that's only slightly brown. Your best tunic comes out of the pack, wrinkled but presentable. Tomorrow you'll either change the course of history or end up in a dungeon for wasting the king's time. In the medieval architecture business, those are pretty much your only 2 options. The throne room at dawn is a different beast than you expected. Forget the grand Hollywood scenes, this is cramped. Smells like wet dog and ambitious nobles, and the king looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Philip Augustus sits on a throne that's trying too hard to look impressive, surrounded by advisors who are eyeing you like vultures, examining a possibly dead rabbit. You set up your models on a table that's probably worth more than your entire workshop. The tiny wooden castles look almost childish in this setting, but you know better. These models will either save the kingdom or get you laughed out of court. The king leans forward, and you notice he's younger than you expected. Also, he has the exhausted eyes of someone who spends his nights worrying about invasion, rebellion, and whether his wine is poisoned. You begin with a demonstration that would make any modern tech presenter jealous. Using candles as signal fires, you show how a message travels from castle to castle. 1 candle lights, enemy spotted at the border. Within seconds, you're lighting the next candle. Then the next. The message races across your model kingdom, faster than a horse could travel the same distance. The king's eyes sharpen. He gets it. But then comes the first challenge. The Duke of Burgundy, a man whose mustache enters the room 3 seconds before he does, stands up. He owns half the Eastern Territories, and he's not happy. Why should his castles serve the crown's network? What's in it for him? This is the medieval equivalent of net neutrality debate, and you need to win it. You pull out your master stroke, economic incentives. The network doesn't just carry military signals, it carries commercial intelligence. The Duke's wine shipments could be tracked. His tax collectors could coordinate. His merchants could know about bandit activity before they lose their goods. You're not asking him to give up autonomy, you're offering him infrastructure. It's like offering free Wi-Fi to get people into your coffee shop. The Duke strokes his ridiculous mustache, considering, then he asks the question every noble asks, what about security? How does he know the king won't use this network to spy on him? And here's where medieval politics gets interesting. You propose encrypted signals. Each castle has its own codebook. Regular military signals are standard, but private messages use unique patterns only the sender and receiver understand. You've just invented encrypted communication channels, although you don't call it that. You call it Noble Privilege Protocol, because everything sounds better when you stroke their egos. The Duke nods slowly. He's not convinced, but he's interested. That's all you need for now. The king raises his hand for silence. The room goes quiet enough to hear a mouse fart. He wants to know about reliability. What happens when it rains? When there's fog? When the watchman drinks too much wine and falls asleep? These are the questions that separate real engineers from dreamers, and Philip Augustus knows it. You've been waiting for this question. You pull out a rolled parchment. Your backup protocols drawn in meticulous detail. Rain? You use horn signals, the sound carrying through precipitation. Fog? Messenger pigeons, trained to fly between specific castles. Drunk watchmen? Every signal requires confirmation from two observers, and failure to maintain watch is punishable by having your hand crushed in a vice, which tends to encourage sobriety. But the king wants more. He stands, walks to your model, and places his finger on a castle. What if this falls? You move quickly, showing alternate routes. The network is designed with redundancy. Every castle can reach at least 3 others. Lose one node and messages route around it. Lose 2 and emergency riders activate. Lose 3 and honestly, you've got bigger problems than communication failure. Then the king does something unexpected. He pulls out his own map, hand-drawn and annotated in his personal script. He's been thinking about this too. He shows you gaps in your network, places where geography makes signals impossible. Mountain valleys, dense forests, rivers that fog perpetually. He's not testing you, he's collaborating. This is the moment when you realize you're not just selling him a system, you're building it together. You spend the next hour in intense discussion. The king suggests mobile signal units, cavalry with portable beacon equipment. You counter with semi-permanent platforms, wooden towers, that can be erected quickly in strategic locations. He proposes seasonal adjustments, different protocols for summer, when visibility is clear versus winter, when snow obscures everything. You suggest weather prediction based on signal observations. If eastern castles report storms, western castles can prepare. The courtiers are getting restless. This level of technical detail isn't what they came for. They want grand proclamations and dramatic gestures, not discussions about optimal tower height for maximum visibility range. But the king is absorbed. He's seeing something they don't, a fundamental shift in how kingdoms operate. Then disaster strikes. A messenger bursts in, mud-splattered and gasping. Norman raiders have been spotted on the coast. 3 villages are already burning. This is exactly the scenario your network is designed to prevent, but it doesn't exist yet. The king turns to you, and in his eyes you see the question, how fast could you make this happen? You do rapid calculations. Basic network, major castles only, simple protocols, 6 months. The king shakes his head. You have 3 months, before winter, before the fighting season ends and enemies have time to adapt. 3 months to build something that should take years. It's impossible. which in medieval engineering terms means it's Tuesday. The king makes a royal decree right there. Every noble must contribute workers. Every monastery must provide literate observers. Every merchant who wants royal protection must fund signal equipment. You've just been given unlimited resources and impossible deadlines, the dream and nightmare of every engineer throughout history. The Duke of Burgundy objects immediately. His workers are needed for harvest. The Bishop of Paris protests that monks are meant for prayer, not military service. The Merchant Guild representative nearly chokes on his own tongue at the cost estimates. The throne room erupts in the kind of polite chaos that only nobility can manage, everyone yelling at each other while maintaining proper titles and formal address. You stand in the eye of this political storm, thinking fast. You need to turn opposition into opportunity. You raise your voice, cutting through the noble squabbling with a proposition that would make Machiavelli proud. The network will be built in phases. Phase 1, critical defensive castles only, focusing on the Norman threat. Contributors get priority access to the network's intelligence. Don't contribute. Your lands get protected last. It's basically extortion wrapped in patriotic duty, and it works perfectly. The Duke realizes his wine regions are exposed to Norman raids. The bishop remembers that several wealthy monasteries are near the coast. The merchants calculate how much they'll lose if trade routes aren't protected. Suddenly, everyone wants to be first in line, but you need more than agreement. You need organization. You propose something radical: standardization. Every castle uses the same signal patterns. Every tower built to minimum specifications. Every observer trained with the same manual. The nobles look at you like you've suggested they all wear the same clothes. Standardization is for peasants. Nobles are unique, special, different. Time for another demonstration. You have 2 apprentices simulate message passing. First using different signals for each castle. Chaos, confusion, messages mistranslated. Then using standard signals. Smooth, fast, accurate. The king nods approvingly. He orders standardization by royal decree. Any noble who modifies the protocols loses network access. You've just created the medieval equivalent of TCP/IP standards, enforced by threat of social isolation. The meeting breaks for midday meal, and you're invited to the king's table. The food is actually edible: roasted venison, fresh bread, wine that doesn't taste like vinegar. But you can barely eat. Your mind races with logistics. 3 months. You need to train hundreds of observers, build dozens of towers, establish communication protocols, create codebooks, breed messenger pigeons, and somehow make it all work together. The king leans over, speaking quietly. He tells you something that chills your blood. His spies report that the Normans aren't just raiding, they're probing, testing response times, mapping defenses. They're planning something big. The network isn't just about communication, it's about survival. If it fails, the kingdom might fall. No pressure. You spend the afternoon assigning responsibilities. The Duke of Burgundy will oversee eastern castles. The bishop will provide literate observers. The merchants will supply materials. You'll coordinate everything while simultaneously designing the technical specifications. It's project management hell, but at least nobody's invented PowerPoint yet, so you're spared that particular torture. As the sun sets, you're given quarters in the palace, an actual room with an actual bed and a window that actually closes. Luxury beyond imagination. You spread your plans across the floor, marking critical paths, calculating construction times, estimating signal ranges. By candlelight, you're building a kingdom's nervous system, 1 tower at a time. 3 weeks into construction, and you're standing knee-deep in mud at what will become Tower Saint Denis, watching your beautiful plans collide with medieval reality. The local lord promised 50 workers. You got 12 and one of them is definitely dead. He just hasn't figured it out yet. The stone was supposed to be cut and ready. Instead, you have a quarry full of rocks and 2 masons who hate each other with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. Your standardized tower design is elegant in its simplicity. 30 feet high, stone base, wooden upper platform for quick construction. Signal equipment on top. Brazier for fire, polished metal for sun signals, bell for sound. A trained observer lives in the tower with backup provisions for 2 weeks. Simple, efficient, reproducible. Except nothing in the 12th century is simple, efficient, or reproducible. The first problem: every local lord has opinions. Lord Robert wants his tower taller because his neighbour's is 30 feet, and he'll be damned if they're equals. Lord Pierre insists on adding decorative elements because apparently defensive communication infrastructure needs to be pretty. Lord Henri has decided the tower should also serve as a dovecote, grain store, and prison. You're not building network nodes. You're managing the medieval equivalent of feature creep. But the real challenge is training the observers. You've gathered literate men from across the region, monks, clerks, merchant sons. They can read and write, sure, but asking them to maintain constant vigilance and accurately relay complex signals is like asking a cat to do your taxes. Possible in theory, disappointing in practice. You've developed a training program that would make modern military instructors proud. Each morning starts with vision tests, identifying signals at maximum range, then code practice, translating fire patterns into messages. Afternoon brings emergency drills. What to do if the tower is attacked, if equipment fails, if the primary observer dies, which, given medieval life expectancy, is a very real possibility. Young Thomas, your apprentice, has proven surprisingly useful. He's developed a mnemonic system for remembering signal patterns. Fire, fire, smokes becomes Father Francis smells, juvenile, but effective. The observers love it. Within days they're creating their own memory aids, each more inappropriate than the last. You let it slide. Whatever helps them remember when Vikings are charging at them. The messenger pigeons are another story entirely. Have you ever tried to train a pigeon? They're basically flying rats with better PR. Half of them fly home immediately. The other half fly to wherever they damn well please. One particularly stupid bird keeps flying to the bakery in the nearby village. You can't blame him. The bread there is actually edible, but it's not helping your communication network. The pigeon master, an old man who claims he trained birds for Charlemagne, which would make him about 400 years old, insists the problem is your towers. Pigeons need specific landing spots, familiar roosts, consistent handlers. You're asking them to adapt to new locations too quickly, so you modify the design again. Each tower gets a dovecote, carefully positioned to provide shelter from weather and predators. Week 5 brings your first major crisis. The tower at Montfort is complete, positioned perfectly to relay between Paris and Rouen. The observer is trained, equipped, ready. Everything is perfect except for one small detail. The local peasants think it's cursed. They've convinced themselves that the signal fires are summoning demons. 3 observers have already quit after finding dead chickens nailed to the door, which is the medieval equivalent of a strongly worded letter. You ride to Montfort yourself, bringing Father Benedict from the monastery. If anyone can deal with superstitious peasants, it's a man who speaks fluent Latin and has God's direct phone number. The village is exactly what you'd expect: mud, misery, and people who regard bathing as suspicious foreign behavior. The village elder, a man whose age is somewhere between old and archaeological, explains the problem. The tower was built on an ancient burial ground, or possibly a fairy ring, or maybe where a witch was burned. The story changes depending on who's talking and how much ale they've consumed. But they all agree the tower is bad news. Father Benedict handles it brilliantly. He performs an elaborate blessing, complete with holy water, incense, and enough Latin to make a lawyer jealous. Then he declares the tower a sacred watchtower of Christianity, protecting the faithful from pagan threats. Anyone who damages it is excommunicated. The peasants, faced with the choice between maybe demons and definitely eternal damnation, suddenly decide the tower isn't so bad after all. But the real stroke of genius comes from you. You hire the village elder's grandson as an assistant observer. Suddenly the tower isn't some foreign imposition, it's providing employment. The boy will earn more in a month than his family sees in a year. By the next morning, peasants are bringing food to the observers and offering to help maintain the equipment. You've turned opposition into investment. Meanwhile, the network is starting to function. The first successful long-distance message travels from Calais to Paris in 4 hours. News of Norman ships spotted off the coast. Previously, this intelligence would have taken 2 days by rider. The king is impressed enough to visit your workshop personally, which is like having Elon Musk show up at your garage startup, except with better hygiene and worse teeth. He brings news both good and bad. The good: your network prevented a major raid. Signals from coastal towers allowed forces to intercept Norman raiders before they reached their target. The bad: the enemy has noticed. They're actively trying to sabotage towers, bribing observers, spreading disinformation. Your network is so effective it's become a target. You need security protocols, and you need them yesterday. You develop a system of authentication codes. Each message includes a cipher that changes daily. Observers work in pairs, monitoring each other for signs of corruption. Emergency protocols activate if a tower goes silent unexpectedly. It's basically two-factor authentication with a side of paranoia. The authentication system leads to unexpected comedy. Lord Henry's observer, trying to be extra secure, creates a cipher so complex he can't remember it himself. He sends a message warning of approaching cavalry, but nobody can decode it. By the time they figure out he meant traveling merchants, 3 castles have mobilized for war, and the merchants have been tackled by overzealous knights. You implement a new rule. Security is important, but if the observer needs a scholar to send a message, it's too complicated. Week 7 brings technical innovations from unexpected sources. The blacksmith at Castle Dreux has created a new signal mirror using a technique he borrowed from making sword blades. The surface is so reflective it can send clear signals even in overcast conditions. You immediately order 20 more, but the blacksmith wants payment up front. He's been burned before. Literally, the last lord who didn't pay had an unfortunate accident with molten iron. The Merchant Guild, initially resistant, has become your biggest supporter. They've realized the network can carry commercial intelligence faster than their competitors. Grain prices, trade route conditions, which lords are actually paying their debts, all of it flows through your towers. They're so enthusiastic, they fund an entire subset of commercial observers. You've accidentally invented medieval market data feeds. But success brings new challenges. The network is generating too much information. Observers are overwhelmed, trying to relay everything. Military signals get mixed with commercial messages. Urgent warnings are delayed by routine communications. You need traffic management, medieval style. The solution comes from an unlikely source, your apprentice Thomas, who's been observing ant colonies. Seriously, he notices they have different paths for different purposes. Food goes one way, waste another. Emergency signals override everything. You adapt this to your network. Military signals get priority. Always, commercial messages use specific time windows. Social communications, And yes, nobles are already using the network to gossip, happen only during designated periods. You create what amounts to quality of service protocols. Emergency signals are like ambulances, everything else gets out of the way. Military intelligence is regular traffic, commercial messages are bulk transport, and social signals are basically medieval spam, tolerated but lowest priority. The king summons you again, this time for a demonstration. He wants to see the network handle a complex scenario. You orchestrate something ambitious, a simulated invasion from 3 directions simultaneously. Observers across the kingdom participate, relaying complex, overlapping messages. It's a stress test of your entire system. The demonstration begins at dawn. The first signal fires light in the north. Viking longship spotted. Before that message reaches Paris, eastern towers report cavalry massing at the border. Then southern castles signal uprising in Aquitaine. 3 threats, dozens of messages, hundreds of decisions to route and relay. For 20 minutes, the network runs perfectly. Messages flow, confirmations return. The king watches his entire realm's defense coordinate in real time. Then Tower Senlis goes dark. No signal, no confirmation, nothing. In network terms, you've just lost a critical node. This is the test. Can your network handle catastrophic failure? The silence from Tower Senlis spreads through the throne room like spilled wine on white silk. Every noble present understands the implication. If one tower failure can break the network, the entire system is worthless. The king's expression remains neutral, but his knuckles are white as he grips his throne. You have maybe 30 seconds before this demonstration becomes a career-ending catastrophe, but you're already moving, directing observers at adjacent towers to initiate failover protocols. Tower Crepi takes over Senli's routing responsibilities. Tower Mose increases signal intensity to reach towers that Senlis normally covers. Within 2 minutes, the gap is bridged. Messages flow around the dead node like water around a stone. The network adapts, survives, continues. The king leans forward. He wants to know what happened to Senlis. You dispatch a rider immediately, but you already have suspicions. 3 days ago, that tower reported unusual activity in the forest. Yesterday, their pigeon returns were late. This morning, their dawn signal was 15 minutes delayed. The patterns suggest either equipment failure or human compromise. While waiting for the rider's return, you demonstrate the network's diagnostic capabilities. By analyzing signal patterns from surrounding towers, you can triangulate what might be happening at Senlis. Delayed responses suggest the observer is under duress. Complete silence means the tower is either destroyed or captured. Irregular signals would indicate attempts at deception. The demonstration continues with Senlis offline. You're essentially performing network surgery in real time, rerouting critical paths, adjusting signal strength, compensating for the lost coverage. It's exhausting, like playing chess while juggling flaming torches, but it works. Every message gets through, just slightly slower. Then the rider returns, his horse foaming at the mouth from the hard gallop. Tower Senlis isn't compromised, it's under siege. Local bandits, emboldened by Norman gold, have surrounded the tower. The observer and his assistant are trapped but alive. They've been maintaining radio silence to avoid giving the bandits information about signal protocols. This is exactly the scenario you've trained for. You activate combat protocols. Surrounding towers begin synchronized signals, not to communicate, but to confuse. Multiple fires, irregular patterns, overwhelming noise. The bandits can see the signals but can't interpret them. Meanwhile, the real message travels by pigeon. Reinforcements needed at Senlis approach from the east, where bandits haven't posted watchers. Within an hour, knights from 3 nearby castles converge on Senlis. The bandits, expecting isolated resistance, find themselves facing coordinated military response. They scatter like roaches when you light a candle. The tower is secured, the observers are safe, and most importantly, the network proved it could handle hostile action. The king stands, and the room holds its breath. He declares the demonstration a complete success. More than that, he doubles the network's funding. Every castle in the kingdom will be connected by year's end. You've just become the most important engineer in France, which is like being the tallest mountain in Holland, impressive in context. Success, however, brings its own problems. Every noble now wants custom modifications to their towers. The Duke of Orleans wants his signals to be blue fire, using copper salts because his heraldry is blue. The Count of Champagne insists his tower needs to be octagonal because circles are too common. The Duchess of Aquitaine, yes, a woman actually holding power, deal with it, demands her observers be trained in southern dialect codes because she doesn't trust northerners. You're not building a network anymore. You're managing a medieval tech support nightmare. Every day brings new requests, complaints, and creative interpretations of standard protocols. One observer has been using pig bladders filled with smoke for signals because he thinks they're more visible. Another replaced the bell with a horn because bells are for churches, not warriors. A third has trained ravens instead of pigeons because ravens are more metal. You implement what you call protocol enforcement visits, which is a fancy way of saying you ride around yelling at people who can't follow simple instructions. At Castle Blues, you find they've been using the signal tower as a romantic trysting spot. The observer claims he's been maintaining morales with the kitchen staff. You point out that maintaining morale doesn't require being horizontal during watch hours. At Abbey Saint-Michel, the monks have modified the signals to include religious messages. Every military communication now starts with a prayer and ends with a blessing. A simple enemy's approaching has become a theological dissertation. You gently explain that while God certainly cares about their safety, he probably doesn't need a formal invocation every time someone spots a suspicious merchant. But the worst offender is Baron Thibault, who's decided the network should be monetized. He's charging tolls for messages passing through his tower, not participating, just passing through. It's like charging people for light that happens to cross your property. You arrive at his castle ready for war, armed with royal writs and the threat of network disconnection. The Baron, a man whose greed is matched only by his body odor, makes his case. The tower costs money to maintain, observers need payment, equipment requires replacement. Why shouldn't he profit from infrastructure on his land? It's a reasonable argument delivered by an unreasonable man eating what appears to be an entire roasted peacock. You counter with network economics. The tower's value comes from connection, not isolation. Charge for passage and messages route around you. Soon his tower becomes irrelevant, his lands become vulnerable, and his enemies know exactly where the network's weakness lies. It's mutually assured destruction, medieval edition. But you also offer a carrot with the stick. Towers that maintain excellent service get priority intelligence. First news of threats, trade opportunities, political changes. The Baron's eyes light up. Insider trading, 12th century style. He agrees to standard protocols in exchange for premium access. You've just invented tiered service levels, and you feel slightly dirty about it. Summer arrives with its own challenges. Heat makes observers drowsy. Sun glare interferes with mirror signals. Smoke from fire signals hangs in still air, obscuring messages. And everyone smells worse, which isn't directly network related, but definitely affects morale. You need summer protocols, different from winter operations. You develop a seasonal adjustment system. Morning signals when the air is clear. Evening confirmations when the sun isn't blinding everyone. Midday breaks because trying to maintain vigilance in medieval summer heat is like trying to stay awake during a PowerPoint presentation about PowerPoint presentations. The observers love you for it. But nature has other plans. A massive thunderstorm rolls through the network, and suddenly you're dealing with medieval electromagnetic interference. Lightning strikes tower charts, starting a fire that sends false enemy signals across 3 provinces. Rain obscures visual signals. Wind tears away flag signals before they can be read. Your beautiful network becomes chaos. In the storm's aftermath, you implement weather protocols. Each tower now maintains weather observation logs. Storms tracked as they cross the kingdom. Fog patterns mapped and predicted. You're accidentally creating the first meteorological network, and farmers are more excited about it than the military applications. The king summons you during harvest season with an unexpected request. He wants to use the network for tax collection coordination. Tax collectors, medieval society's most hated profession after executioners, and whoever invented head lice, could coordinate their movements, track who's paid, identify evasion patterns. It's brilliant and terrifying. You design encrypted tax protocols, because nobody wants their financial information broadcast across the kingdom. The encryption is simple but effective, numerical codes that change based on the day of the week. Monday's 1 is Tuesday's 7. It's not unbreakable, but it's enough to frustrate casual eavesdropping. The tax network works too well. Within weeks, royal revenue increases by 30%. Nobles can't hide grain surplus. Merchants can't claim bandits stole shipments that actually sold. The church suddenly discovers it owns more gold than it reported. The king is ecstatic. Everyone else wants you dead. You beef up your personal security. Your food taster now has a food taster. You sleep in a different room each night. Your horse is checked for sabotage before every ride. You're living like a paranoid dictator, except you're just trying to build communication infrastructure. Then comes the message that changes everything. Norman forces are massing for real this time. Not raids, not probes. A full invasion, hundreds of ships, thousands of warriors. The network lights up like a Christmas tree. If Christmas trees were on fire and screaming, every tower reports preparations, movements, suspicious activity. The king mobilizes everything. Knights summoned, levies raised, supplies gathered, all coordinated through your network. Messages that would have taken weeks now happen in hours. The kingdom prepares for war at unprecedented speed. You've built something that works maybe too well. The war room at dawn looks like someone spilled an army across a map and forgot to clean it up. Wooden tokens representing military units cover every surface. The king hasn't slept in 3 days, surviving on wine and determination. Your network has identified 17 different Norman landing sites, and he needs to defend them all with forces that could maybe handle 5. You're not a military strategist, but you understand information flow. You propose something radical. Don't defend everything. Use the network to create the illusion of strength everywhere, while concentrating real forces at critical points. It's basically a distributed denial of service attack, except with actual knights instead of data packets. The plan is elegant in its deception. Skeleton garrisons at most castles, but equipped with extra signal equipment. They create the appearance of full defensive readiness, multiple fires, constant signals, visible activity. Meanwhile, the real armies hide at strategic positions, ready to respond based on network intelligence. The enemy will see strength everywhere and weakness nowhere. Implementing this requires precise coordination. Every false signal must be believable. Every real troop movement must be hidden. You create what amounts to a medieval virtual private network, encrypted channels within the public network that carry actual strategic information, while the visible signals show elaborate theater. The first test comes within days. Norman scouts probe the coast near Dieppe. The local tower, manned by exactly 3 people, an observer, his assistant, and a cook, who's mostly there for moral support, creates the illusion of a major garrison. Fires blaze from multiple positions. Horns sound from different directions. Flags wave from every wall. The scouts report back. Dieppe is heavily defended. Meanwhile, the real defensive force waits 20 miles inland, positioned to respond to actual landings rather than feints. The network tells them exactly where and when to move. It's like playing chess, when you can see your opponent's pieces, but they can't see yours. But the Normans aren't stupid. They've been watching your network develop. They know about the towers, the signals, the communication patterns. Their strategy is simple and terrifying. Attack the network itself. Take out key towers, and the kingdom goes blind. The first tower falls at midnight. No warning, no signal, just sudden silence from Tower U. By dawn, 2 more have gone dark. The Normans are surgically removing nodes, trying to create blind spots for their invasion. It's exactly what you feared, and exactly what you prepared for. You activate emergency protocols, mobile signal units, mounted knights with portable equipment, fill the gaps, merchant vessels offshore relay coastal observations. Even fishing boats become part of the network, paid in silver to watch and report. You're crowdsourcing medieval intelligence, and it's working. The Norman commander, Robert Fitzpatrick, and yes, that's really his name, medieval naming conventions were weird, is genuinely brilliant. He's not just attacking towers, he's feeding false information into the network. Captured observers forced to send incorrect signals. Fake fire patterns designed to confuse. He's conducting information warfare 8 centuries before anyone coins the term. Your countermeasure is straight from modern cybersecurity, authentication challenges. Every signal now includes a personal component only the real observer would know. The name of his dog, his mother's birthday, the embarrassing nickname his assistant has. It's 2-factor authentication using medieval social engineering. But the real genius comes from young Thomas, who suggests using the false signals against the enemy. If the Normans are inserting fake intelligence, track where it leads. False reports of weakness would reveal where they plan to attack. Fake strength warnings show what they want to avoid. The disinformation becomes information. You map the false signals, and a pattern emerges. The Normans are trying to create a blind spot near Honfleur. Every fake message pulls attention away from that area. They're planning to land there, probably within days. The king positions his forces accordingly, but secretly, let them think their deception is working. The network buzzes with controlled chaos. Real signals mixed with fake ones. Critical intelligence hidden in routine messages. You're running 3 networks simultaneously. The real one, the one the enemy thinks exists, and the one you want them to believe. It's exhausting. You haven't slept properly in weeks, surviving on bread so stale it could be used as building material and wine that's basically vinegar with ambition. Then comes the morning that changes everything. Every coastal tower lights simultaneously. Norman ships on the horizon, hundreds of them. But here's the beautiful thing, you know exactly where they're heading. The false signals, the destroyed towers, the pattern of probes, it all points to Honfleur. The trap is set. The Norman fleet approaches the coast expecting minimal resistance. The false intelligence suggests most forces are positioned elsewhere. The destroyed towers should have created communication darkness. Instead, they sail into a perfectly coordinated defensive response. Knights positioned exactly where needed. Archers with clear fields of fire, even the tide timing used against them. The battle is brutal but brief. Norman longships burn in the harbour. Landing forces are caught between the sea and strategically positioned cavalry. Your network coordinates reinforcements in real time, moving forces to exploit weaknesses, shore up threats. It's like conducting an orchestra where every instrument is a sword. But Fitzpatrick has one last gambit. A secondary force hidden until now attacks from the south. They've been waiting, watching the network's response to the primary attack. Now they strike where forces have been pulled away. It's brilliant tactics, except for one thing: you've been expecting it. The southern attack hits exactly where your analysis predicted. You've left it deliberately weak, but with perfect observation coverage. Every Norman movement is tracked, reported, relayed. The King's reserve force, hidden in forest camps and monastery grounds, mobilizes instantly. What the Normans think is opportunity is actually a killing field. The battle becomes a masterclass in information superiority. Norman commanders can't move without being observed. Their signals are intercepted, decoded, countered. Meanwhile, French forces coordinate with unprecedented precision. Cavalry charges synchronized across miles. Archers repositioned based on real-time intelligence. It's medieval command and control at its finest. But war is chaos, and chaos doesn't follow protocols. A Norman berserker unit breaks through at Pont-Audemer, threatening to cut the network in half. If they take that tower, the entire Western communication chain collapses. The local observer, a monk named Brother Francis, who joined because he thought it would be peaceful contemplation, finds himself commanding the defense. Brother Francis does something insane and brilliant. He doesn't defend, he floods the network with signals. Every piece of equipment firing simultaneously, bells ringing, fires blazing, mirrors flashing. The sensory overload confuses the attackers, who assume massive reinforcements are arriving. They hesitate just long enough for actual reinforcements to arrive. The battle turns into a rout. Normans retreat to their ships, but the network won't let them escape cleanly. Coastal towers track their movement. Cavalry harasses their flanks, based on signal intelligence. Even their retreat routes are predicted and blocked. It's not just victory, it's systematic destruction enabled by information dominance. Fitzpatrick himself is captured, and here's where things get interesting. The king offers him a choice: execution or consultation. Help improve the network's security by revealing its weaknesses. It's hiring the hacker who broke into your system, medieval style. Fitzpatrick, being practical about his neck's continued attachment to his body, agrees. The collaboration is weirdly productive. Fitzpatrick identifies vulnerabilities you missed. Single points of failure in the command structure. Timing attacks that could overwhelm observers. Social engineering tactics to corrupt tower staff. You're essentially getting a medieval penetration test from someone who tried to penetrate with actual weapons. Together you develop new security protocols, rotating cipher keys, dead man switches that trigger alerts if towers go silent, honeypot towers, fake nodes designed to attract and identify attacks. It's adversarial learning before anyone invents the term. The king is so impressed he offers Fitzpatrick a permanent position. The Norman accepts, probably because medieval job markets don't offer many positions for failed invasion commanders. Your network security team now includes the guy who best understands how to break it. It's either genius or insanity. As autumn arrives, the network has evolved beyond military communication. It's carrying diplomatic messages, trade negotiations, even academic discussions between monasteries. You've built something that's changing how information moves through the medieval world. Knowledge that once took months to spread, now travels in days. Ideas cross borders at the speed of fire and light. Winter preparation starts with a disturbing discovery. Your network has been too successful. Every minor lord, wealthy merchant, and ambitious bishop wants their own tower. The kingdom looks like someone with architectural Tourette's just started building everywhere. Towers on hills, towers in valleys, towers on top of other towers. It's infrastructure cancer, and it's killing your carefully designed network. The problem isn't just aesthetic. These rogue towers use non-standard signals, creating noise in the system. They're built by whoever offered the lowest bid, which in medieval terms means they'll probably fall over when someone sneezes nearby. Worst of all, they're not secure. Anyone can buy access, including French enemies, Norman spies, and that weird guy who collects toenails. You petition the king for regulatory power, essentially asking to become the medieval FCC. The authority to approve tower construction, certify observers, standardize equipment. The nobles resist immediately. Regulation is for peasants, not peers. The heated debate in the throne room could melt steel. If anyone had figured out how to make steel properly yet. Your solution is clever. You don't ban private towers, you create a certification system. Certified towers get network access. Uncertified ones are isolated, worthless. It's like having a phone that can't connect to any network. Suddenly everyone wants certification, which means following your standards. The certification process is thorough. Tower inspection for structural integrity. Will it survive a siege or a stiff breeze? Observer evaluation for competence. Can they tell the difference between enemy cavalry and a herd of cows? Equipment verification for compatibility. Are they using approved signal patterns, or just setting random things on fire? One inspection at Castle Beaugency reveals the local lord has been using his tower primarily to spy on his neighbor's wife. The observation logs are remarkably detailed about her daily bathing schedule, but somehow missed the Norman raid that passed right by last month. You revoke his certification so hard his grandchildren will feel it. But private towers aren't all bad. A merchant consortium has built a chain of commercial towers along trade routes. They track shipments, monitor road conditions, warn about bandits. It's essentially medieval Amazon tracking, except the packages are wine barrels and the delivery drivers are armed. The church wants its own subnet for ecclesiastical matters. Bishops need to coordinate without secular interference. You design encrypted channels within the main network, holy signals that civilian observers can't decode. It's separation of church and state, implemented in fire and smoke. Then there's the University of Paris, which wants to use the network for academic purposes, sharing research, coordinating debates, arguing about how many angels can dance on a pin while simultaneously signaling. You create scholarly protocols, lower priority than military or commercial, but protected from interference. It's the first academic network, predating the internet by 8 centuries. Winter hits like a frozen hammer to the face. Suddenly your beautiful network starts failing everywhere. Braziers won't stay lit in howling winds. Ice forms on mirror surfaces, making them useless. Observers are too busy not freezing to death to maintain proper watches. One tower in the Alps reports their observer is now a very artistic ice sculpture. You develop winter operations protocols, learning from failures as they happen, enclosed observation posts with small heating fires that won't interfere with signals. Dare icing procedures using salt and vinegar solutions. Rotation schedules so observers don't become permanent fixtures of the frozen landscape. But winter also brings unexpected advantages. Snow reflects light, amplifying mirror signals. Sound travels further in cold, clear air. Enemy movement is easier to track. Armies leave trails in snow like signatures. Your network becomes more effective in some ways, if you can keep the observers from dying of exposure. The real challenge is maintenance. Roads are impassable. Supply deliveries are impossible. Towers are isolated for weeks. You implement winter stockpiling, Each tower must have 3 months of supplies before first snowfall, food, fuel, replacement equipment, and enough wine to make the isolation bearable. One tower, St. Omer, gets creative with isolation boredom. The observers start a competitive signal art contest, creating elaborate patterns that still convey information but look impressive. A warning about wolves becomes a dancing flame wolf. Trade caravan signals turn into fire paintings. It's simultaneously stupid and brilliant. The king, warming himself by a fire that could roast an entire army, wants to know about network expansion. He's thinking beyond France. England has networks. The Holy Roman Empire has networks. If they could interconnect, create a super network spanning Europe, imagine the possibilities. You explain the challenges. Different kingdoms use different protocols. Language barriers exist. French fire signals might mean something entirely different in German. Political trust is non-existent. Asking kingdoms to share military intelligence is like asking cats to share their favorite napping spots. But trade doesn't care about politics. Merchants are already creating informal connections. French towers signal to Flemish ones about textile shipments. Italian towers relay banking information north. The commercial network is naturally growing across borders, dragging diplomatic and military applications behind it. You propose international standards, a common signal protocol for basic messages, danger, safe passage, trade opportunity, kingdom-specific encryption for sensitive information, regular conferences to coordinate changes. You're basically inventing the International Telecommunication Union, medieval edition. The first international test happens by accident. An avalanche in the Alps blocks a major trade route. Swiss towers signal the blockage. French towers relay it west. Flemish towers spread it north. Within days, trade routes adjust across half of Europe. The network has become bigger than any single kingdom. Spring brings 2 arrivals, muddy roads and a delegation from the Byzantine Empire. They've heard about your network and want to buy the technology. Not collaborate, not share, buy it outright. They offer gold, silk, spices, and a suspicious number of religious relics that are definitely all authentic pieces of the true cross. The Byzantines have their own signaling system, Greek fire for communication. It's more advanced in some ways, using chemical compounds that burn different colors, but it's centralized, controlled entirely from Constantinople. Your distributed network intrigues them. They want to hybridize the systems. You spend weeks with their engineers, exchanging ideas through translators who understand neither engineering nor proper translation. Discussions involve elaborate hand gestures, drawings in mud, and occasional accidental insults when technical terms translate to something inappropriate. The Byzantine system has innovations you hadn't considered. Timed burns that encode information in duration. Chemical additives that make smoke visible at night. Floating signal platforms for river communication. But their fatal flaw is complexity. It requires extensive training and expensive materials. Your system's strength is simplicity. Any literate person can learn basic signals in days. Equipment can be built by local craftsmen. The network is resilient because it's distributed and redundant. It's the difference between a sophisticated machine and a robust ecosystem. The cultural exchange produces unexpected innovations. Combining Greek fire chemistry with your simple protocols creates new possibilities. Weather-resistant flames that burn in rain, smoke that penetrates fog, signals visible for 20 miles on clear days. The network's capability jumps dramatically, but success breeds jealousy. The Holy Roman Empire, seeing French and Byzantine cooperation, demands access to network technology. The English, worried about being surrounded by networked enemies, threaten economic sanctions. The Pope wants to know why Christian kingdoms are sharing sacred knowledge with schismatic Greeks. You're suddenly not just an engineer but a diplomat. The network has become too important for purely technical decisions. Every protocol change has political implications. Every new connection shifts power balances. You're playing medieval geopolitics with signal fires. The solution comes from an unexpected source. The Hanseatic League, the merchant confederation that basically runs Baltic trade. They propose a neutral network zone. Commercial signals flow freely across all networks. Military and political signals remain encrypted and kingdom-specific. It's net neutrality, version 0.1. Implementing this requires trust, which is in shorter supply than honesty at a medieval court. You develop verification systems, neutral observers at border towers, regular audits of signal logs, penalties for violating commercial neutrality. It's complicated, messy, and held together by mutual greed rather than goodwill. The first truly international message flows from London to Constantinople. A merchant's query about silk prices traverses 5 kingdoms, dozen towers, multiple protocols. The response returns in 3 days. Previously this would have taken months. The medieval world just got smaller. You're summoned to investigate the strangest problem yet. The network is working perfectly, too perfectly. Messages are arriving before they're sent. Not literally though, in the Middle Ages. That wouldn't be the weirdest accusation. Towers are reporting events with impossible accuracy. The Count of Toulouse swears his tower predicted a thunderstorm down to the minute, 3 days in advance. Investigation reveals something fascinating. Observers, spending months watching horizons, have become inadvertent meteorologists. They're tracking cloud patterns, wind directions, bird migrations. Their logs contain detailed environmental data. Without meaning to, you've created the world's first weather monitoring network. Brother Francis, the monk who defended his tower with signal chaos, has taken this further. He's correlating weather patterns with signal quality. High pressure means clearer long-distance signals. Approaching storms create atmospheric conditions that extend range. He's discovered atmospheric ducting 8 centuries early. You compile observer logs from across the kingdom. Patterns emerge. Storms follow predictable paths. Seasonal variations repeat. Temperature changes cascade from region to region. The network isn't just reporting weather, it's predicting it. Farmers are offering prayers to towers instead of churches. The king sees military applications immediately. Weather prediction means knowing when to campaign. Fog forecasts prevent ambushes. Storm warnings protect supply lines. Your communication network has become an intelligence network in ways nobody anticipated. But there's a darker discovery. Analyzing signal patterns over time reveals human patterns too. Trade routes, troop movements, even social gatherings follow predictable cycles. The network is mapping not just physical infrastructure but behavioral infrastructure. You can predict where merchants will be next month, which lords are likely meeting secretly. This is dangerous knowledge. You're essentially conducting mass surveillance with medieval technology. Every signal logged, every pattern recorded, every deviation noted. The network knows more about the kingdom than the king does. You implement data protection protocols, medieval GDPR, if you will. Observation logs are encrypted. Access requires authorization. Personal pattern data is anonymized unless there's a security threat. You're trying to balance utility with privacy. 8 centuries before anyone thinks privacy is a right. The merchant guild objects immediately. They've been using pattern analysis for competitive advantage. Knowing when competitors move goods, where demand spikes occur, which routes are oversupplied. It's insider trading with signal fires. They threaten to withdraw funding if you restrict their data access. The church has different concerns. Monks have been tracking moral patterns. Which regions have more feast day celebrations? Where pilgrimages originate? How quickly religious news spreads? They're conducting sociological research without knowing what sociology is. Restricting their access means blindfolding God's administrators. A crisis emerges when the network reveals an uncomfortable truth. The Duke of Burgundy has been evading taxes for years. Signal patterns show trade flowing through his lands that never appears in tax records. Hundreds of shipments, thousands of pounds in lost revenue. The network has accidentally become a forensic accounting tool. The Duke's defense is creative. He claims the signals are counting the same shipments multiple times. Merchants passing through multiple towers are being recorded repeatedly. It's double counting, not tax evasion. The throne room becomes a medieval data science symposium. You're forced to develop deduplication protocols. Each shipment gets a unique identifier, a combination of origin, destination, and cargo type. Towers check if they've seen this combination before. It's database normalization using fire and smoke. The process is exhausting but necessary. The investigation reveals the Duke is partially right but mostly guilty. Some double counting exists, but he's definitely hiding revenue. The network's data is undeniable. Signal logs don't lie, even if nobles do. The king recovers 3 years of back taxes, and you make another powerful enemy. But the network's analytical power has positive applications too. Disease tracking becomes possible. When plague appears in a village, towers relay warnings faster than the disease spreads. Quarantine zones are established based on network intelligence. You're conducting epidemiology with medieval technology. One outbreak in Normandy is contained entirely because of network coordination. The first cases are reported via tower signals. Surrounding regions immediately restrict movement. Supply deliveries are coordinated to avoid infected areas. The plague burns out locally, instead of spreading. Thousands of lives saved by information moving faster than infection. The medical applications expand further. Monasteries share treatment information. Successful remedies are broadcast across the network. Failures are documented to prevent repetition. It's collaborative medical research, medieval style. Still mostly wrong. Bloodletting remains popular, but wrong in coordinated ways. Then someone has a brilliant idea. Why not use the network for education? Monasteries could share manuscripts via signals. Not entire books but key passages. Important discoveries, theological debates. The network becomes a primitive digital library, where digital means fire and smoke. You develop academic protocols. Long-form transmission for complex ideas. Error checking for accurate reproduction. Citation standards so sources are maintained. Scholars can now debate across kingdoms without traveling. It's distance learning, 8 centuries early. The University of Paris becomes the hub of this academic network. Lectures are summarized and transmitted. Student questions are relayed to distant masters. Doctoral defenses are observed by scholars across Europe via signal descriptions. The ivory tower just became a network node. Your success attracts unwanted attention. A group of nobles, led by the perpetually angry Baron Thibault, petition the king to nationalize the network. They argue it's too powerful for one person to control. You're not even noble-born. How dare you hold the kingdom's nervous system in your common hands? The king's response is politically brilliant. He doesn't nationalize the network. He incorporates it, creates the royal core of signals. With you as grand architect, you're suddenly nobility, granted lands and title, specifically the abandoned tower where this all started. It's either reward or irony, but nobility comes with obligations. You're expected at court, required to navigate political intrigue, forced to marry strategically. The king suggests several eligible daughters of various lords. They're all perfectly nice, probably, but you're more interested in signal propagation than propagating heirs. You negotiate a compromise. You'll maintain a noble household, but remain focused on network development. Your apprentice Thomas is elevated to Master of Protocols. Other key positions are created: Chief of Tower Standards, Master of Observer Training, Keeper of Cipher Keys. You're building an institution, not just infrastructure. The formalization brings unexpected benefits. Standardized training means consistent quality. Career paths attract better candidates. The Corps develops its own culture, traditions, even a motto: Ignis Veritas, fire and truth. It's cheesy but effective. Then disaster strikes. A massive fire destroys the Paris Central Tower, taking with it years of logs, cipher keys, and 3 observers who died trying to save the equipment. It's not enemy action, a knocked-over candle, human error, tragic accident. The network's first major peacetime failure. Rebuilding reveals the network's resilience. Surrounding towers have duplicate logs. Cipher keys are reconstructed from partial records. New observers volunteer immediately. The system is designed to survive node failure, and it does. But the human cost haunts you. You implement safety protocols, fire suppression equipment at every tower, emergency evacuation procedures, memorial funds for observers killed in service. The network isn't just technology, it's people, and people are fragile. The memorial service for the fallen observers is attended by the king himself. He speaks about sacrifice, duty, the importance of information in protecting the realm. Then he announces something unexpected: a university for signal science, a place to study communication, information theory, network design. The Royal University of Signals is established in Paris, with you as its first chancellor. Suddenly you're not just running a network, but educating the next generation. Students arrive from across Europe to study the science of communication. They're young, eager, and ask questions you can't answer. The university's first semester is chaos incarnate. Your students range from brilliant young nobles who understand mathematics to thick-headed lordlings who think signals involve waving at peasants. The curriculum you've designed, covering everything from atmospheric effects to cryptography, is ambitious. Perhaps too ambitious for people who still believe sneezing releases evil spirits. Your first lecture on network topology is interrupted by a student asking if towers need to be blessed to prevent demon interference. Another wants to know if signals travel faster during holy days. A third suggests using catapults to launch burning messages, missing the point so spectacularly you're almost impressed. But among the dross, there's gold. Lady Catherine de Montpellier, one of 3 female students who enrolled despite massive opposition, develops a new cipher system based on musical notation. Each signal corresponds to a note. Messages become melodies. It's brilliant, combining art with engineering. Another student, a merchant's son named Marcus, proposes mobile towers, wheeled platforms that can be deployed rapidly. His prototype, built in the university courtyard, looks like a siege tower had a baby with a windmill. It's ugly, unstable, but it works. Mobile network nodes. Centuries before cell towers, the university becomes a laboratory for network innovation. Students experiment with colored glass for filtered signals. Alchemists try chemical flames that burn underwater. One particularly creative group trains dogs to carry backup messages when towers fail. The success rate is low, but the enthusiasm is infectious. Then comes the accident that changes everything. During a night demonstration, a student accidentally creates a signal visible for 50 miles, far beyond normal range. Investigation reveals he mixed Greek fire compounds with local materials, creating an intense focused flame. It's dangerous, unstable, but revolutionary. You quarantine the discovery, working with Byzantine engineers to understand it. The mixture requires precise proportions. Too much sulfur and it explodes. Too little and it won't ignite. But properly mixed, it triples signal range. The network can now span gaps previously thought impossible. The king immediately classifies the formula. Only certified towers receive the mixture, stored in specially designed containers. The strategic advantage is enormous. French signals can now outrange any competitor. It's an arms race, except with communication rather than weapons. But secrets don't stay secret in medieval Europe. Within months, spies are everywhere. Students are offered bribes. Servants are questioned. One cleaning woman is caught making detailed drawings of storage containers. The formula is the most valuable intelligence in Europe. You implement counterintelligence measures. False formulas are leaked. Decoy experiments are conducted publicly. The real work happens in sealed chambers with trusted personnel. It's the Manhattan Project of medieval communications, minus the radiation, but with similar paranoia. Winter brings an unexpected student, Rashid ibn Mahmud, a scholar from Cordoba. He's traveled months to study your network, bringing Islamic knowledge of optics and mathematics. His presence causes uproar. A Muslim in a Christian university, studying military communications. Half the faculty threatens to quit. You make a calculated decision. Knowledge has no religion. Rashid is admitted, but under strict conditions. He can't access military protocols. His research must be shared. Any discoveries belong to the university. It's unfair, borderline discriminatory, but it's the best you can manage in the political climate. Rashid's contributions are immediate and profound. Islamic scholars have been studying light for centuries. He understands reflection, refraction, focal points. Within weeks, he's designed lenses that focus mirror signals into tight beams. Range increases dramatically. Accuracy improves. Interception becomes harder. His greatest innovation is the signal telescope, a tube with carefully ground lenses that magnifies distant fires. Observers can now read complex signals from twice the previous range. It's revolutionary technology that will eventually become the telescope, but right now it's just making your network better. The collaboration leads to unexpected friendship. Rashid shares stories of the Andalusian signal networks, using mirrors to flash messages between mountaintop fortresses. You share your distributed protocols. Together you design hybrid systems combining both approaches. Then politics intervenes. The Pope declares a new crusade. Suddenly Rashid isn't a scholar, he's an enemy. The university is pressured to expel him. Students are divided. Some support academic freedom, others want the infidel gone. The situation is explosive. You find a solution that satisfies nobody but works. Rashid is appointed to a neutral position, liaison to the Venetian trade network. Venice doesn't care about religion, only profit. He can continue research while technically not being part of the French system. It's a diplomatic dance on a knife's edge. The controversy has an unexpected benefit. It attracts attention from scholars worldwide. The university becomes known as a place where knowledge transcends politics. Applications flood in from Scotland to Sicily. Your student body becomes truly international, but international students bring international problems. Scottish students feud with English ones. Italian city-states conduct proxy wars through academic debates. German students insist their beer is necessary for proper studying. The university becomes a microcosm of European conflicts. You implement strict protocols. No political discussions during lectures. No national groupings in dormitories. All students must learn French, Latin, and basic Arabic numerals. The last requirement causes rebellion. Apparently, Arabic numerals are a gateway to Islamic conversion. Spring brings graduation for your first class of signal engineers. They disperse across Europe, taking network knowledge with them. Within months, towers are appearing everywhere. Your protocols become the standard. The network effect you predicted is happening. The more nodes, the more valuable each node becomes. But standardization brings unexpected problems. Everyone uses the same signals, including enemies. The English build towers using your protocols, then use them to intercept French communications. Your open standards have become a security vulnerability. The solution comes from Lady Catherine, now graduated and working on royal encryption. She proposes rotating regional keys. Each area has unique modifiers that change regularly. The base protocol remains standard, but local variations prevent enemy interpretation. It's localized encryption on a continental scale. Implementing this requires massive coordination. Key distribution becomes critical. Observers need regular updates. Synchronization must be perfect. One tower with the wrong key breaks an entire chain. You're managing complexity that would challenge modern systems. Then comes the proposal that changes your life. The king wants you to design something unprecedented, a network reaching Jerusalem. The Crusader states need communication with Europe. Existing methods take months. Your network could reduce this to weeks. The engineering challenges are staggering. Crossing the Mediterranean requires relay ships or island towers. Passing through hostile territory needs disguised signals. Different languages, cultures, climates all affect transmission. It's the moonshot of medieval engineering. You assemble a team of your best graduates. Marcus designs portable towers for desert deployment. Catherine develops heat-resistant equipment. Rashid, through Venetian connections, provides maps of potential routes. Even Fitzpatrick, the former Norman commander, contributes knowledge of naval signal techniques. The plan requires cooperation from Italian city-states, Byzantine Empire, and various Crusader orders. Each has different agendas. Venice wants trade monopolies. Byzantium wants political intelligence. The Crusaders want military advantages. You're building a network while navigating a political minefield. Test signals begin with short hops. Venice to Dubrovnik, Dubrovnik to Corfu. Each successful link proves the concept, but the real test is the Constantinople connection, 1,000 miles of hostile or neutral territory. The first transcontinental signal takes 3 weeks to travel from Paris to Constantinople. Not the speed of light, but compared to previous methods, it's revolutionary. The message is simple. Network established. The implications are enormous. Europe and Asia are now connected by information infrastructure. 5 years have passed since that first tower, and you're standing in Jerusalem, watching the sun set over ancient walls while your signal fires prepare to light. The network now spans from Scotland to the Holy Land, carrying everything from trade negotiations to love letters between separated nobles. You've changed the world, though the world doesn't quite realize it yet. The Jerusalem Tower is an engineering marvel built on diplomatic nightmares. Christians, Muslims, and Jews all claim the city. Your tower needs to serve all three without favoring any. The solution is elegant. 3 separate observation posts, each operated by their respective communities, all feeding into a central signal system. It's multi-faith networking, and it actually works. Tonight's demonstration will prove the network's ultimate capability. A message will travel from Jerusalem to London in under a week. The signal will pass through dozens of kingdoms, cross 3 seas, traverse mountain ranges, and somehow remain intact. If it works, you've essentially conquered distance. The message itself is carefully chosen, a market price for spices, completely neutral, valuable to everyone, offensive to none. If a merchant in London knows Jerusalem's spice prices within a week, trade routes will revolutionize. Economic networks will reshape around information flow. The medieval world economy will never be the same. Your team is scattered across the network, monitoring critical nodes. Thomas oversees the Alpine crossings. Catherine manages encryption transitions between kingdoms. Marcus maintains the mobile maritime relays. Rashid coordinates the Mediterranean segment. Even old Fitzpatrick is running North Sea signals. The signal fires at sunset Jerusalem time. You watch the flame climb into the darkening sky, knowing that within minutes, observers in Acre will see it and relay it north. From there to Antioch, then through Anatolia to Constantinople, each link in a chain that you forged from fire and ambition. But as you watch, you think about unintended consequences. The network has made warfare more efficient, armies coordinate better, casualties mount faster. It's enabled surveillance, kingdoms track their citizens like never before. Information inequality has increased. Those with network access have massive advantages. Yet it's also saved lives. Disease warnings prevent plague spread. Weather predictions protect harvests. Lost children are found through coordinated searches. Knowledge spreads faster than ever. Monasteries share medical discoveries. Universities debate across continents. The Renaissance is beginning, sparked partly by your flames. A messenger arrives with updates from relay stations. The signal has reached Constantinople in 4 hours, faster than expected. Strong winds are creating perfect visibility. If conditions hold, London will receive the message in record time. 3 days into the transmission, disaster strikes. The Alpine segment goes dark. Not one tower, but 6, simultaneously. It's either the worst storm in decades, or coordinated sabotage. Either way, your message is stuck in northern Italy, with no way forward. But this is exactly why you built redundancy into the system. Southern routes activate immediately. The signal diverts through Genoa, taking a maritime path around the Alps. It's slower, more complex, but it works. The network adapts like a living organism, rotating around damage. Then you receive disturbing intelligence. The Alpine towers weren't destroyed by weather or enemies. They were shut down by their own operators. A rebellion among the signal corps, demanding better pay, safer working conditions, recognition for their dangerous work. Your own people have turned the network against itself. It's a crisis you should have seen coming. Observers spend months in isolation, risking their lives for modest pay, watching nobility get rich from their intelligence. They're the backbone of the network, and they've been treated like furniture. The strike spreads, more towers go dark. You make a radical decision. Instead of forcing compliance, you negotiate. Travel personally to the Alpine holds, meeting with strike leaders, listen to their grievances. They're not wrong. The work is dangerous, lonely, critical. They deserve better. The negotiations are intense. You offer not just better pay, but stakes in the network itself. Observers will receive percentages of commercial message fees, hazard pay for dangerous positions, rotation schedules to prevent isolation madness, death benefits for families. It's the medieval equivalent of stock options and comprehensive insurance. The nobles are furious, paying commoners like craftsmen, giving them ownership stakes. It's social revolution, but you point out the alternative: no network at all. The kingdom's nervous system held hostage by the people who operate it. Suddenly, fair compensation seems reasonable. The strike ends, towers relight. The Jerusalem message resumes its journey, now carrying additional significance. It's not just commercial intelligence, but proof that the network can survive internal crisis. The system is anti-fragile, growing stronger from stress. As the message crosses into France, something beautiful happens. Tower operators add their own signatures, small variations in signal timing that identify who's transmitting. It's pride in their work, community building across vast distances. The network isn't just infrastructure anymore, it's culture. 6 days after leaving Jerusalem, the signal reaches London. Spice prices from the Holy Land arrive faster than some local messages. The merchant who receives it immediately corners the pepper market, making a fortune. But more importantly, he immediately sends a response: London wool prices heading to Jerusalem. The bidirectional flow changes everything. The network becomes conversational. Jerusalem asks about European wine. London inquires about silk routes. Venice negotiates directly with Cairo through coded flames. The medieval world has discovered something like the internet, powered by fire and human dedication. You return to Paris to find the university has tripled in size. Students from China have arrived, bringing knowledge of gunpowder signals. Vikings share runic encryption methods. An Aztec envoy, arriving through Spanish connections, describes smoke signals that carry complex pictographic messages. The world's communication knowledge is converging. But you're tired. 15 years of building, fighting, innovating have taken their toll. You're wealthy beyond imagination, powerful beyond measure, but you can barely remember why you started. Was it curiosity, ambition, or just the challenge of making distance irrelevant? The king summons you for what he says is your final assignment. He wants you to document everything. Write the definitive guide to network construction, operation, and theory. Create a manual that will outlive you, ensuring the network survives its creator. It's your magnum opus, your legacy. You spend months writing, drawing, explaining. The manual covers everything from basic fire signals to complex network topology, how to position towers for maximum coverage, how to train observers for accuracy, how to manage the politics of information flow. It's part engineering textbook, part philosophical treatise on the nature of communication. But the most important section is about failure. You document every mistake, every disaster, every hard-learned lesson, how towers fall and networks survive, how human error is inevitable but manageable, how the network is only as strong as its weakest observer, and therefore every observer must be strong. As you write, young engineers are already improving your designs. Chemical signals that work in rain, mechanical semaphores for precise daylight communication, clock mechanisms for automated signals. The network is evolving beyond your imagination. One evening, Thomas visits, now Grand Master of Signals himself. He brings news a merchant in Baghdad wants to extend the network to India. The Chinese are building their own compatible system. Vikings are establishing Arctic routes. Your network has become humanity's network. You realize this was always inevitable. Information wants to flow like water finds the sea. You didn't invent the network, you just gave it form. Fire towers will become telegraph lines, then telephone cables, then fiber optics, then satellite links. The medium changes, but the need remains. On your final day as Grand Architect, you climb your original tower, now a monument. The kingdom's entire network spreads before you, fires twinkling like earthbound stars. You light one last signal, not a message, just pure light. Within minutes, towers across Europe respond, the network acknowledging its creator. You've done something remarkable. In an age of swords and superstition, you built an information age. You connected kingdoms with light, united enemies through commerce, spread knowledge faster than horses. You were the first network engineer, and you didn't even know what that meant. But here's what matters. The network will outlive you. Long after your bones are dust, signals will still fly from tower to tower, messages will flow, knowledge will spread, humanity will be connected. You've lit a fire that will never go out. So next time you send a text, post a tweet, or stream a video, remember it all started with someone standing on a tower, lighting a fire, and wondering if anyone would see it. The technology changes, but the human need to connect remains eternal. Comment below about your favorite part of this medieval networking saga. Like if you enjoyed this deep dive into castle architects as the first network engineers. Subscribe for more stories about how ancient innovations shaped our modern world. And remember, every time you use the internet, you're part of a tradition that stretches back to people lighting fires on cold stone towers, believing that information could conquer distance. Until next time, keep your signals clear and your towers standing.